día más con Naturopatía al Día. Noticias nacionales e internacionales de la ciencia y profesión naturopáticas.
Muy buenas, estamos un día más en Naturopatía al Día y en esta ocasión seguimos viajando, en este caso hasta Australia, para conocer algo más a Amie Steel, que es naturópata e investigadora de la Facultad de Salud de la Universidad Tecnológica de Sidney. Muy buenas tardes allí, noches allí. Buenas.
Good night, Miss Steel. She is a researcher and naturopathic doctor. She is from Australia. She is with us in our program here in Naturopatía al Día. We are going to interview her about she's viewing of naturopathy profession in Australia.
Y lo primero que te quería preguntar, Ami, es ¿qué importancia crees que tiene el hecho de aplicar el método científico en la práctica de la naturopatía?
And the first question is, what is the importance of scientific investigation in the practice of naturopathy?
That's an interesting question because scientific investigation is really just a process of observing what happens in the natural world and making notations on that observation and gathering that information for future decisions, really. And so that from that perspective, scientific investigation is really important for naturopathy. And in fact, the whole system of naturopathy has been built on scientific investigation by observing what happens, and all of our traditional practices have been based on previous clinicians observing what happens in the natural world and in clinical care and building on that knowledge over time. So scientific investigation, I think, is core to naturopathy. It's just making sure that scientific investigation is done in a way that is the observation of naturopathy rather than the observation of some very minute part of treatment. It's a whole system of how naturopathy is practiced. So scientific investigation is really important for that. And we just need to make sure it's being done the way that best suits our profession and our practice and our philosophies and our principles.
Cuéntanos, Ami, ¿cuál es la situación actual de la profesión naturopática en Australia?
Okay, thank you. And the next question is, what is the situation of the naturopathic profession in Australia?
The naturopathic profession is really strong in Australia. We have we've got thousands of clinicians, not as many as there are in Spain, but we have thousands of clinicians. It's been maturing over time. So we have degree level qualifications, which are available at university level. So they're 4-year bachelor degrees to study to become a naturopath. That course has been available for about 20 years, but there have also been other courses that are for shorter periods of time that have been available. So it's not a registered profession, which means that people from all sorts of qualifications and backgrounds are currently practicing as a naturopath in Australia. We are working quite hard within the profession to establish a minimum requirement of training and practice to help to strengthen the profession for the future at the moment. So we've been lobbying to the government to get registration for naturopaths alongside many other health professions that are already registered, as we believe that it's appropriate for the profession to to ensure that only people who actually trained as a naturopath can use the title of naturopath and tell the public that that's what they're doing.
Bueno, hace muy poquitos días se creó el Consejo Naturopático de Australia. ¿Qué te parece este nuevo paso de la naturopatía, de la profesión naturopática en su país, en Australia?
Well, the Australian Naturopathic Council has just been created. What do you think about this new step of naturopathy in your country?
The Australian Naturopathic Council is one of the most positive things that have happened to the naturopathic profession, I believe, since I joined the profession 20 years ago. The council is an agreement between all of the World Naturopathic Federation members in Australia, the educational institutions, the professional associations, and the regulatory body that we have, to come together and work together to advance the profession and to provide a united voice to government and to other stakeholders outside of the profession about what it is that naturopathy needs and what it is that we all agree we can put our energy into helping make happen for naturopathy.
Esta idea de unificar la voz de todos los naturópatas de cara, sobre todo, a instituciones públicas, a instituciones políticas, que, como bien acabo de decir ahora, habéis iniciado allí recientemente. ¿Crees que es exportable a otros países, tanto de vuestro entorno como del resto del mundo?
This great idea of having a unique voice for public and political institutions, do you think that is expandable to other countries?
Absolutely. What we have done, we've actually modelled off other countries. There's similar institutions in Canada and the United States. Done is a very simple process. Simple in the execution, but somewhat more complicated in the politics of the planning. You have to have all of the organisations involved in agreement. What the World Naturopathic Federation has given for us is that because to be in the World Naturopathic Federation, you have to be committed to minimum education standards in the country. You have to be committed to registration, and you have to have primarily, your organisation has to primarily represent naturopaths. So we have this common ground that this has been allowed us to start conversations. A number of the organisations in the Australian Naturopathic Council have been working together informally for years on different opportunities that have come up or challenges that the profession has faced. So the Australian Naturopathic Council has provided an opportunity for us to formally come together and have an agreement between us that we will work together and that we will collaborate where we need to drive the profession forward and help to make it stable and secure and viable into the future. There's no reason that any other country that, particularly where there's World Naturopathic Federation presence, can't do that. That you can have agreement that you don't have to agree on everything, but where you do agree, you can put that message out there to the general community and to the government and to other stakeholders to and be really clear that this is a view of every organisation in the profession. This is not just a lone voice arguing for one element. This is everyone coming together and saying, no, we really, really need this. I think that other countries can absolutely do it. You just have to be prepared to have conversations with the other organisations and come together as a profession.
Perfecto, Amie. Cuéntanos o háblanos del cómo son, cuál es el plan de estudio de la naturopatía en las distintas universidades de Australia.
Okay. What are the subjects studied in naturopathy in Australia?
Well, naturopathy in Australia is a Bachelor of Health Science, and so there's core subjects in anatomy, physiology, biochemistry, clinical medicine, which is diagnostic and disease processes. So there's core subjects. And then the treatment, there's also subjects specifically around naturopathic philosophy and principles and the history of naturopathic medicine. There's also the treatment modality subjects, primarily a herbal medicine and nutritional medicine. Nutritional medicine includes both dietary treatment as well as clinical supplement nutrition. And there's also a range of electives that a naturopath can choose, massage therapy or manual therapy, homeopathy. There's some traditional Chinese medicine, philosophy or acupuncture-based electives that they can choose. Iridology is in amongst the diagnostics. So naturopaths in Australia are trained, but the herbal medicine and the nutritional element are probably the primary treatments that a naturopath is trained to.
Y dentro de la práctica naturopática, ¿qué técnicas se suelen utilizar más?
Techniques. What are those techniques used in daily practice by Australian naturopaths?
Okay, can I just, before I answer that, to say, Asha, you're making a lot of noise with what you're eating. Sorry. What are the techniques used in practice? Well, naturopathic practice in Australia is very eclectic. So obviously herbal medicine and nutritional medicine are very dominant, and dietary prescription, but also lifestyle changes are a large element of naturopathic care in Australia. There's lots of relaxation or meditation style techniques that naturopaths would prescribe. As I said, some would prescribe homeopathy. Some would include acupuncture in their treatment toolkit. Some would include some massage. Massage is often where a lot of naturopaths start to build their practice when they first start in practice. They use manual therapies. But there's all sorts of other mixes that could be in there. Kinesiology, lots of different flower essences are a big part as well, the Bach flower essences and other flower essences. So there's lots of different treatment techniques that a naturopath would use in their practice. And really so long as they're practicing in accordance with the naturopathic philosophies and principles, there's no real restrictions on the treatments that they use within the scope of what's considered to be naturopathic.
Okay, we are going to stop a little bit. We are going to cut this part because can you move a little bit to your right side?
Oh, sorry.
No, it's okay.
I'd moved before with my son, sorry.
Don't worry. Thanks.
Bueno, sí.
We continue.
Seguimos con la entrevista. Nos has hablado de la situación actual de la profesión naturopática en Australia. Quiero que nos cuentes ahora cómo ha sido el proceso histórico de profesionalización de la naturopatía en su país.
Well, we have been talking about the naturopathic profession in Australia, but can you talk a little bit about this historical process of naturopathic profession in Australia?
Yes, I can talk a little bit about that. Naturopathy has been in Australia for quite a long time. The exact date is around the 1800s. I think we've got the first newspaper article making specific reference to naturopaths. And in fact, one of the interesting things from that is the newspaper articles referring to the naturopath being called in to court as a witness, as an expert witness in a case to describe someone's health condition of someone who is being accused of something. And that was a really interesting find for us because it showed that the naturopath in this story was actually seen as an expert representative of health in the community. And there's another reference from around the same time period in which there was an article explaining a naturopath coming to a growing regional town, showing and the fact that the naturopath had started practicing there was evidence from the newspaper article's point of view that naturopaths were that the town was growing. And so the fact that the naturopath both of these stories showed that from the early stages of the country, keeping in mind Australia has only been settled by European settlement since the late 1700s, that in very early stages of the country's history, the naturopathic profession was actually seen as having some representation and some professional expert position. However, what started to happen around this time when the medical profession began to take issue with the role that the naturopathic profession was playing in the country was they started to actually lobby to the government to have naturopathy separated out. And so the growth of the dietetic profession actually came from that, and also physiotherapy were two professions that actually started to establish in Australia by the medical profession separating out those two elements of naturopathic care, the manual therapy and the dietetic practice, and separating them away from a naturopathic practitioner providing that care. So we actually had a position where we were quite well established and well respected in the community, and then this lobbying process and of government occurred in which the naturopathic profession started to be eroded. And then around the mid-1900s, so around the 60s, the natural medicine movement began, in which a lot of other natural therapies became popular and of interest, and they started to co-opt the brand of naturopathy. So there was a lot of confusion as to whether or not you could just be trained in a few natural medicine techniques and that would make you a naturopath, rather than being trained within the core philosophies and principles and practices of naturopathic care. So there was another element that became quite challenging. And at that period of time, the history of naturopathy became quite challenged in Australia. And we're really only recovering the last 10 or 15 years from that, in which we now have an established minimum requirement of a bachelor degree for new naturopaths graduating. And we have a core group that acknowledge and require and understand the difference between natural medicine and naturopathy. And whilst there's a relationship between the two, that one is not equal.
La Asociación de Naturópatas de Australia forma parte de la World Naturopathic Federation, de la Federación Mundial de la Naturopatía. Concretamente está encajada dentro de la región del Pacífico Occidental. Y quiero que nos cuentes qué retos, qué objetivos crees que tiene la profesión naturopática en Oceanía.
Well, the Australian Naturopathic Council is a member of the World Naturopathic Federation, and we want that you talk a little bit to us. What are those challenges of the naturopathic profession in Australia?
The two main challenges that we focus, there are two sets of challenges, I guess. There's challenges outside of the profession and challenges within the profession. So challenges outside of the profession, right now is the fact that we've just had the government has just revoked the ability for naturopathic clinicians to have, or patients of naturopaths to claim private health insurance rebates for consulting with a naturopath. That's something that we have had access to for a number of years, and there's been a government review that revoked that. So we've been lobbying quite hard, and all members of the Australian Naturopathic Council have been involved in that before the Australian Naturopathic Council was formed formally, in lobbying for that to change. And we've had an agreement from the government to review that decision. And, so we've got another 6 to 12 months ahead of us of really putting a strong case forward and talking with the government and the scientific review panel from the National Health and Medical Research Council to make that decision and to change that decision. And that decision needs to be changed based on the available evidence that naturopathy is effective in a number of health conditions. So that's one of the main things. The other slightly longer term or middle term challenge we have is having statutory registration of naturopathy approved by the government. So that's another major challenge that we have. That's a lot of work we need to put together to put a submission in that and pull the evidence and the documentation together to show the government that we meet the criteria of a profession that should be registered against their guidelines. So they're the two major outside challenges. And within the profession, probably the main challenge that we have has historically been a challenge of unity, a challenge of differing perspectives and differing voices, pulling in different directions and weakening the profession. We have a number of organisations that have historically presented themselves as representing naturopathy, but they don't have, the majority of their members are not naturopaths. And that has been historically confusing for the government, because they have been sending messages to the government that don't support what the naturopathic profession globally and nationally really needs. So the Australian Naturopathic Council that's probably one of the strongest things that we present, is unity and collaboration, and we'll be sharing resources as well, so that the membership fees that are paid to the individual organisations are most effectively spent without duplicating as well. So there's a few challenges, but we are really positive that by working together and collaborating effectively, we're going to overcome those challenges in the next few years.
Y bueno, para terminar, te queremos preguntar, bueno, por un evento que va a tener lugar en Lyon, en Francia, para hablar sobre el aspecto científico de la profesión naturopática, en la que tú vas a asistir como ponente. No sé si nos puedes adelantar algo de este evento.
And the last question is about that meeting that it will take place in Lyon, France. And we understand that you will be there and you will make some collaboration in talking about some topics, or kind of, I don't know. And we wonder if you can talk a little bit about your collaboration in that meeting, and if you tell us about what we will wait in that Congress.
Sure. So the meeting in October in Lyon that I'm facilitating, it's being hosted by a WNF member in Lyon. That is an invitation to all WNF members in Europe to come together to start to look at how the research activity for naturopathy in Europe can be strengthened and improved. It's helping to work out a strategy for working together as a group across the whole region, so that everyone who has an input into naturopathic research can share their resources, share their perspectives, share their ideas, and come to a group decision on what the best way forward is, so that they're all working together in the region. Because I am a naturopath and I am a researcher, and I have worked in this space in Australia already. I was invited to help facilitate the meeting and help facilitate the conversation, really, with all of the European members, and the idea for me that the ideal outcome from that meeting will be a bit of a plan moving forward for how the European community of naturopaths can really help to progress research in Europe, because there's research in North America, there's research in the Western Pacific, and the Europe, which is the real heart of naturopathy, it's the root of where naturopathy comes from, and we all know that, and we want to see that there's research that's coming from the European community as well.
Pues bueno, Amie, te damos las gracias por participar en esta entrevista, por estar con nosotros en Naturopatía al Día. Ha sido un placer viajar, aunque sea virtualmente, hasta Australia. Y bueno, te invitamos a que en próximas ocasiones, por ejemplo, antes o después de tu visita a Lyon, pues estés de nuevo con nosotros para seguir hablando sobre la profesión naturopática. Antes de despedirme, quería agradecer a Sergio Alcalá por llevar la traducción del programa, que si no, no es fácil, lo ha hecho muy bien. Gracias, Sergio. Y bueno, pues nos despedimos hasta otra próxima ocasión.
Well, it's been a pleasure. It has been a pleasure to have you with us today. We hope that when the Congress, the meeting in Lyon, France, and we hope that we can have another interview with you in order to have your impression, to know a little bit what happened or what was your impression in that Congress. And thank you very much. We hope to have you soon here again.
Thank you so much for the invitation, and I'm really very excited to see more happening in Europe than it was already happening. So, yeah, thank you.